ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music and more.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.
If you watch sport, and chances are you do, I mean, this podcast is literally called Sport Daily, you've probably heard that tagline, right? It, or a version of it, is on the end of punting ads that are littered through our sport. It's a government-mandated warning. The gambling companies have to include it off the back of their ads because Australia punts and loses a lot of cash. But what if you won? And won quite a bit? I'll give you the tip. You'd almost certainly be blacklisted by those offering the odds. Today we're talking to a professional punter who has won a lot and been banned a lot about an industry that is highly unconventional. I'm Patrick Stack. This is ABC Sport Daily. Dan Rosenheck is an American data journalist based in London who writes for The Economist, and in his spare time he gambles on sport. But unlike regular punters, he wins a bit. Now, to be clear, this isn't a conversation designed to tell you to gamble. We're not saying how you should spend your money. We are just exploring a semi-secret world and how it all works. And Dan, we're going to start with your personal story, then understand the industry more broadly. The saying goes, the house always wins. How have you been beating the house?
The house does usually win, and on the biggest, most liquid markets, betting on who's going to win tomorrow night's Premier League soccer game, those prices are very hard to beat. Fortunately, those aren't the only things you can bet on. Sportsbooks offer an impressively, almost unfathomably wide array of events and props and futures and you name it. Many of those markets do not attract the same kind of institutional liquidity at the level of, the stock market that you would get for the biggest events. And so they're often pricing inefficiencies in less liquid markets. And, if you're a minnow like me, you could try to capitalize on this. I do some of my own modeling. I have the skills where if I have a new question or a new idea, I can go do a study, test the historical data, see whether my hunch is right. But there are also just statistical models that are either publicly available on the internet or that friends or acquaintances of mine have built that I also have access to, and we all trade information. So far, that's been sufficient.
So it sounds as though a big part of this is trying to identify those inefficiencies and then sort of fly under the radar in order to make some gains. And there's no guarantee, I guess, even if you find an inefficiency that you're going to win that particular outcome. But talk to me about what happened when you did win. Was that sort of permitted, as it were, by these United Kingdom-based betting houses?
Well, it's permitted in the sense that they'll pay out your bets. They just, once they determine that you are not going to be a profitable customer for them, they will either cease to take future bets from you entirely, or they will cut your maximum permitted wager size to a trivially small amount, which is effectively a ban.
So that's a good jump-off point for a kind of broader discussion. Talk to me about how gambling companies, punting houses identify liabilities and what are some of the tells or anomalies they're looking for in their customers that show that this person is what you would call a sharp, someone who is likely going to take the house down?
The first thing to say is that sportsbooks are under no obligation to treat different customers the same. It's, they're depending on the country, there are laws. You can't discriminate based on race or gender or whatever. You definitely can discriminate based on how good you think somebody is at sports betting. In fact, that's a core part of most of their business models. Ultimately, the way you would tell if somebody's good is whether they beat you, but by the time they've beaten you, they've cost you a lot of money. So you would generally do your best to try to predict not only what's going to happen in sporting events, but also predict which customers are and are not going to be profitable before you lose to the ones that aren't. That player profiling process starts from the minute you sign up. They'll track by what means you came to their site, what kind of device you're using, where you are geographically, what time it is, how you deposited. All of those things can provide them some information about what type of player you're likely to be. Then your first bet speaks volumes. What you bet on, when you bet on it, were they the best price in the market on that thing at that time? Did you use a bonus bet? Did you use it optimally? One tell that has been kind of widely discussed recently is when you're given free bonus bets or risk-free bets where you get your stake returned as bonus bets if you lose, the mathematically optimal strategy is to put it on a long shot. And people who, particularly with the risk-free bets, when the U.S. was launching, they'd be like $1,000 risk-free. If you took your $1,000 risk-free bet the whole 1,000 on something at 10-1, lost, then put your 1,000 risk-free on another 10-1, that is just not recreational player behavior. That would be enough to get your limits cut. Once you've got a few bets under your belt, they can track what's called closing line value, which is they compare the odds that you got to where the odds were on that wager right before the event began, which is the most efficient market closing price. And if you are consistently getting better odds than where the market closed over your first 5 or 10 bets, that's enough for the book to know that even if you lost most or all of those bets, you're probably going to have the better of them in the long run.
I'm intrigued to know how sharps or professional gamblers avoid detection, because it sounds as though the race is on to detect you if you are good at what you do.
Broadly, there are two approaches. This is all assuming that by the time you're getting into this, you've lost all of your own accounts. So you're going to have to go through third parties in some way, which is not something that sports books technically permit you to do, but is definitely something that is widely done. You can take the churn and burn approach, which is basically getting as many other people's accounts as you can, knowing that they're going to get cooked, but just try to make as much money as possible from them before they get cooked. The other would be more of an account longevity approach where you will take steps to cover your tracks. That means certainly not picking off mistake prices, not picking off prices where the book is clearly the best in the market, trying to basically disguise your winning bets by hiding them in a torrent of sort of break-even bets. So a lot of sharps will talk about the skill and importance of identifying not just winning bets, but bets that are break-even or maybe where you're only expected to lose 1% rather than the standard 5% or so. Because if you can identify bets that are pretty close to break-even, then you can make 10 of those bets in your account for every one where you expect to make money. Those 10 will just wash out. You'll make the money on the one, but your overall closing line value will be diluted by the 10 break-even bets, so it'll be much harder for them to tell you're sharp. And then I guess more advanced dark arts would be either what's called account priming, which is because books don't just lower limits for winners. They also raise limits for their deepest pocketed and most reckless losers. Lose $10,000 or $20,000. Get them to think that you are a big fat whale. Get your account limits raised. And then once you've got a VIP account that can bet 5 times as much as a regular account or more, then you go the account longevity route, but, with 5 accounts worth of access in a single account. And then I guess the final thing would be what's called whale flipping, which is the only thing better than pretending to be a degenerate gambler, is actually having a degenerate gambler who has real booked losses of tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, and just having them let you bet in their account because they'll have limits to the ceiling.
Tell me about the relationship between a sharp and a so-called beard, someone who is helping you execute what you're doing there. What's the normal financial transaction? Is a beard, someone who's placing bets on behalf of a professional gambler, breaking the law?
The relationship varies. I think the most standard thing would be a 10% free roll, which means that over a defined time period or the life of the account, if there are any winnings, which there hopefully are, the beard gets 10%. If there are any losses, net losses, those losses are the professional gamblers alone. Bigger or more sophisticated beards are what are called movers, people who coordinate access to beards, who have a network of accounts that they can access and effectively sell that to sharps, will often just do a straight 50-50 equity split. The sharp will just typically text a mover a play. The sharp will say, hey, I like this bet at this price. The mover will work through their network of beards, typically paying them a 10% free roll to get as large a position down as possible. And then the mover and the sharp will just split any winnings or losses 50-50. And the mover trusts that the sharp, called an originator, knows what they're doing and their plays are good. And is this illegal? It definitely violates sports books' terms and conditions, which are not the law. It's the fine print on their website. If you win a lot of money from them and they catch you, they could, in theory, try to sue you back for it. In practice, that doesn't usually happen. They just void any winnings that you haven't withdrawn and close the account. There is a potentially legal gray area if you are not only betting through somebody else's account, but you are actually logging in as them and clicking in the bets yourself. I am not aware of any actual criminal prosecutions of people trying to do this, but that is definitely seen as a worse offense, although many movers do it as a matter of necessity. If you've got 200 accounts that you're trying to bet through at once, you absolutely cannot be texting 200 people at once and having them all get down at the exact same time.
All of this sounds like a lot of effort, so I'm assuming it's worth it, that there's probably a lot of reward. I knew this is a hugely variable question, but how much would like a medium-level professional gambler expect to be bringing in annually as a consequence of this sort of execution?
It is hugely variable. One thing that makes it extra hard to say is that once you get up into the big leagues, you are very rarely a sole practitioner. You will, at the very least, be working through betting partners to get your bets down, and you will often have your own infrastructure. You'll need, somebody to handle all your accounting. You'll typically need a software developer to handle your modeling and execution. And so sports betting syndicates are companies that range in size. Not everybody has the same amount of profit share. I can say that in the U.S., a high-end sole practitioner would typically be making mid hundreds of thousands. That would be somebody who is quite good at this and a high-end professional. To get up to the sort of seven-figure level, you would need to have a more industrialized operation. But I can tell you that the very biggest syndicates in the world that I know of are probably betting something like 12 million a week. So they're betting hundreds of millions a year, and they're, typically making maybe, if you're really good, 3% on that handle. So, they're making tens of millions of dollars that would then get split up among their various partners.
Dan Rosenheck, you've shed light on a seemingly secret industry. Appreciate the context and the reporting. Thank you.
My pleasure. Happy to help. Thank you.
Headlines. Novak Djokovic is into another Grand Slam semi-final. He's lucky to be there. Down 2 sets to love when opponent Lorenzo Musetti retired hurt. He's at an interesting point in his career, Novak. Imagine being the best to have played the sport, outlasting Roger and Rafa, and then finding himself chasing the next big things in Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz. He was asked about that by a journalist afterwards. Didn't love the framing of the question.
I'm chasing Yannick and Carlos? In which sense?
In terms of winning Grand Slam titles just right now.
So I'm always the chaser and I'm never being chased.
In the meantime, you won 24 Grand Slams. But I'm saying it's...
Thanks. It's worth saying that sometimes, right?
Yannick Sinner easily took care of Ben Shelton. Those two will go head-to-head in the semis. The women's semi-finals are in action Thursday night. It's live on ABC Listen. Sophie Molyneux has been announced as the next women's captain of the Australian cricket team, with Alyssa Healy on the way out. The 28-year-old has won the honour. It was something of a minor surprise, given Talia McGrath has been filling in when Healy was injured of late. Ash Gardner was also considered a contender. Those two are now vice-captain. Molyneux will start Feb 15 against India in Sydney. In the NBL, Adelaide was well in control against Brisbane when a brawl was sparked in their clash.
DJ from downtown, you bet! And a little bit of afters as well. Rakocevic is into it. This is absolutely on.
It's on
Terry
here.
Taylor's over the top. It's a clear the benches type brawl.
Let's get it on.
7 players ejected, 3 from the 36ers, 4 from the Bullets. And former US Masters champ Patrick Reed has joined Brooks Koepka in bailing on Live Golf for a return to the PGA. I'm Patrick Stack. This is ABC Sport Daily, produced by Poppy Penny. Thanks to ESPN for the extra audio used in this episode.
Discover more great ABC podcasts, live radio and exclusives on the ABC Listen app.